Welcome, everybody, back to OTT Executive Podcast. I'm Brian Mahoney, the CEO of Trend Research and the president of the OTT Executive Community. We're continuing in our conversations with leaders of the OTT industry. Today, we're joined by Michael Senzon, who's the president of digital for Allen Media Group.
Hello, Brian. Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Well, this is great. So, as you know, Michael, one of the things we really like to do is personalize some of the luminaries in the industry, get to know you a little bit better, learn from that, and then kind of move into what's happening in the industry. Let's start with your career background. Like, how'd you get your start in this crazy industry?
Yeah. I actually, it was funny when I heard you say we were going to talk a little bit about my background, it brought me down memory lane. But what came to mind was how fortunate I've been and how grateful I am for all the opportunities I've had. And it started out. I got out of college in '99. So at that point, it was kind of like the dot-com bubble was getting bigger and getting ready to burst, if you
Oh,
will.
yeah.
And I'd obviously been focused on production news. I was very much a self-taught engineer, developer, doing web, video. I just kind of loved all of that. And I stumbled into an internship, which turned out to be a great experience. And I look back on still to this day, if I could go back and do something over again, I would love to go be an intern for David Letterman one more time. I think some of the things that I saw then, I didn't realize how it would help me later, but sweeping floors and running scripts and, picking up packages, what interns would do in those days. I feel like an old guy now, saying that,
Do they
but
still do that? I mean, that's kind of like the classic story, or you're working in the mail room or you're working in the green room or whatever, and you work your way up. Does that still happen in the industry these days?
I think so. I mean, I think it's to a lesser degree. I mean,
Okay.
I bump into people all the time, and I really, people always gave me an opportunity to give guidance and advice when I was young in my career. Somebody once said, "Hey, just say, hey, you're looking to learn."
Hmm.
And when I say that, I think anytime anybody comes at you with, "Hey, I'm just trying to learn," whether you're in
Yep.
the mailroom or delivering a cup of coffee, I think it just sets people at ease, right? Because you're all in it together. It becomes a mission, right? It's not
Yep.
about an ego. I really
There's a
love
certain
that. So
humility in that. Like, okay, I'm here, help me
100%.
out. And
Yeah.
people,
And it
good-natured people will do you that favor. They'll mentor you, right?
absolutely. And I think, I'd say it still happens maybe differently than it used to. I think, I quickly kind of pivoted my career. And I worked at some multimedia startups because I had some engineering and products background and I was really into that,
Hmm.
which then led me back into CNN. And it didn't take me very long to get my way over to CNN Digital.
Okay.
And, I think that was kind of a good example of where just asking for help, right? Hey, I want to help. I want to help cover this war. I think that there's things we can do with multimedia and streaming and product. I mean, granted, this is, 20 plus years ago.
Yep.
That was not the priority, right? Cable was like in its heyday and things were all about the cable network. But, by being that sort of tinkerer and willing to try new things led me down this path that I think is still available to people today. And it really just turned into essentially doing everything possible at CNN Digital, from multimedia, understanding engineering and product. And it was very much like an incubation period for digital.
Hmm.
Monetization was still kind of very wonky. But it led to, in 2005, which is one of my favorite kind of moments, I worked on the core team that launched the first direct-to-consumer product that I'm aware of, which was called CNN Pipeline.
Hmm.
And our objective was to essentially do 12 hours a day of live news that was not breaking the CNN cable carriage agreements at the time. It was separate, it was different, but we used all the resources of CNN.
Hmm.
And I had the great opportunity of, going traveling all over the country from the White House to the campaign trail and, streaming video and rethinking how we can make the product useful. That led to, advertisers kind of really speaking up and saying what they did want, which was they wanted, content that was unique and distinctive, which kind of birthed original video
Yep.
in the probably like mid 2007 to 2010. And I was fortunate to have founded the first original video team at CNN, which later became a Great Big Story. And the premise was to work with sales, keep the
Yeah.
line of editorial, right, and the business side, and generate franchises that could be monetized. That allowed us to, from a business perspective, and that's kind of when I started to get into the business side of media, which was, all right, we can generate revenue off of these highly sponsorable franchises, and that can fund the big J journalism, which our brand's reputation is sort of anchored on. And that was a great run there, and Great Big Story took off under the leadership of colleagues of mine. I ended up at that time, I got recruited by NBC, having
Mhm.
built video there, CNBC specifically, to help build out their operation. So I had relocated to New York and started working at CNBC, where I got to lead the business strategy for video, growing the video business, growing revenue, creating new products, creating original video sponsorships for
Mhm.
sales. But also, really, the moment there is where I got to work and start really leaning into OTT. Now, this is 2014, and CNBC had an OTT product, as did NBC News,
Yeah.
right? And that's the process in which we started to put content there that was in front of the paywall. You kind of had you had to log in through cable, but it was the onset of, okay, like streaming is real and it's going to become something big.
Mhm.
So over time, it was really interesting. I remember the moment when we had a call with Pluto, because Pluto was launching this service and they wanted to take our clips and turn it into a channel. And no one really knew what it was. It turned out to be a great partnership for us at CNBC.
Mhm.
Um, and we evolved, right? And I've had this great fortune of kind of always getting to be kind of close to the next thing, and as the consumer behavior evolves. So I'm so grateful for that. So in wrapping up my time at NBC, really, we were on the forefront of streaming. We had established carriage agreements of carrying content, or partnering with places like Yahoo Finance, and then also distributing to places like Pluto. So the world was really, streaming was really kind of, I call it like the true infancy was happening around us. And a lot of people didn't, there was really not a lot of faith, right? In like, what is Pluto? Is this some place we should be distributing our content? And the same thing goes for the platforms, right? A lot of work and effort that the product team had put into like creating these owned and operated apps. We didn't have a lot of viewership yet,
Mhm.
right? But it was incubating, and we were beginning to see the world. So that was a moment for me that I was like, okay, streaming is really, the time has come. And I was always reflecting back
Mhm.
on 2005 on that CNN pipeline project, which was just way ahead of its time, just way too early. And it was exciting. So, I set my sights on streaming.
Mhm.
And that kind of set me up for my next role, which we can
Before
talk
before
about
you
as
go there, Michael,
well.
one of the questions I have, and maybe you kind of already answered it, is what was that inflection point where with the projects you were working on, where streaming went from kind of being a toy or a prototype or something to experiment with the light bulbs went on. I'm like, there's real revenue here. This is the future. We got to, invest more in this. And was that at CNN? Was that at NBC? When did that happen? When did that click?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's just been moments. I'd say there's, look, I think everybody wants a revolution of like this revolutionary moment. To me, it was more of evolutionary moments that sort of led to the larger streaming revolution. And yeah, I'd say it started at CNN, and I'd say probably 2005 when we made the decision to go from paid, it was a paid service. Even watching video was paid through the Real Player, the Real Networks player, to going free, right?
Yeah.
And I think free became like, okay, we're now democratizing access, right? It was already hard enough. I mean, go back to 2005, the internet's still young, and you're asking people to pay for stuff. That's a huge leap, right? Even today,
Yeah.
it's a huge leap. You see the same thing with direct to consumer.
Yeah.
So to me, that was a massive inflection point. And then as the marketplace and advertisers sort of got involved and said, hey, we want to be able to sponsor
Mhm.
franchises, we want distinctive video, we want to be able to touch users in a certain way. That was another inflection point, right? And that drove a lot of that business. I mean, that was why Great Big Story kind of got the investment at CNN. And I had left at that time, but and then as I moved into NBC, we had it got into probably the most important inflection point I saw there was you have these really niche audiences and you have these really, really high value um, advertisers that want to match those high value audiences.
Yep.
And we saw that there, right, with shows like Options Action, which is a CNBC show, franchises that were created to help fulfill that high value audience at really high CPM. So again, that just building upon it. As to me, what we happened at that point was while streaming was not really, no one really knew what sort of fast was at that time or really understood it. Essentially, what it later became was the same inflection point, which is you have a captive audience leaned back. We were always talking about lean in, lean back on
Right.
digital and web.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then like the true lean back happened when it's like, oh, by the way, digital's not about your laptop or your phone, right? Everyone was spending so much time thinking about the phone, right?
Yep.
It's like, oh, how do you, everyone's moving to the phone. Well, no, everyone's moving to the phone and they're still watching TV. Like that to me was probably
Right.
one of the most transformative moments. And Pluto has a lot, takes a lot of credit for that, right? For convincing the marketplace to say, hey, there's a lot of great content out there that's yet to be monetized or can be monetized again via streaming.
Okay.
And then, what happened is sort of this opportunity came up here at Weather Group, which was just newly acquired. As a matter of fact, Byron Allen had just acquired the Weather Group, the Weather Channel Television, and
What
I
year
had
was that?
joined just that was 2018. It was
Just
in the
18. Okay. Cool. Yep.
first quarter of 2018.
Okay.
And it was really intriguing to me because I had this great opportunity. One of the things that I have done in my career is work at the intersection of, the traditional newsroom and the traditional organization and the digital organization. And there's a lot of transformation that many of my colleagues have, we've kind of on the front lines of leading the change. So many people are credited with the success there.
Hmm.
But it was good experience, and the Weather Group had just gone through a change because IBM had purchased the digital assets from the Weather Group. So I had this opportunity to come in, and streaming was a big focus. And they had this little property that was really just putting out fast channels called Local Now,
Yep.
and they were looking to really build it up. So I joined the company in 2018 to help bolster Local Now, and the first mission was really to really turn the fast channels into just more robust fast channels that we were distributing.
Hmm.
As time went on, we kind of wasn't too long. It was about a year and a half as we were knocking on the door of the pandemic. It was right in that moment, sort of there was a kernel of an idea that had come up with Byron probably in 2019, maybe even 2018. And I remember talking to him and saying, hey, it's kind of like you own the largest station group in the country. So you had these 223 fast channels that were mostly just automated being distributed out to Sling. They had an app which just let you open the app and watch the stream. So it was very basic service, groundbreaking for its time for sure, and a lot of great work. The Weather Channel pioneered localization, and that
Yep.
continued right into this brand. So as I came into the organization, the first priority was to really bolster the content and to begin to aggregate content from partners across the country, whether they're local or national, build an editorial team so that these channels are truly, robust, produced channels with high story count and valuable to users. So
Yep.
that was mission number one, and that kind of went on for the first year. As at that time, it was probably mid 19 when we started to lay the foundation for it. Was in the beginning of 2019 by beginning to talk to studios about major content deals. The first one was Lionsgate, and that's something that Byron we worked on actually at the conference, the NAPI conference in
Yep.
Miami of 2019,
That
and
was
that
5 years
led.
ago. It just boggles my mind that it seems light years ago, but it also seems like yesterday, you know?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So that led to us starting to get some movies up on the platform.
Yep.
Before you know it, we were rolling into 2020, and the pandemic, right, was knocking at our door. And there was a lot of question marks about what might happen. And ultimately I credit Byron for, organizationally pushing us, because I do remember the phone call And, the way he saw it, I mean, we saw the trends. There was movement happening with people are being home. Streaming is going to take off. Like we knew it was going to happen. It also unlocked the fury of every streaming service possible, right? Kind of
Right.
the pandemic, go back in time from, CNN Plus to all of the services that are alive today. So, that's kind of that to me is kind of the beginning day of the chapter, which where we really said, all right, we're going to go launch a major streaming service that is going to be the best version of free TV. And I stand here today to tell you, or I sit here today to tell you that local now it
Yeah.
really is the best free TV experience that is a national platform. It leads with local. We have over 1,000 channels and we have set over 700 local channels. Not everyone sees the same channels.
Right.
We're leading marketplace. We've invested heavily in our product and our design to make it a very easy transition for cord cutters, but
Yeah.
also very intuitive for cord nevers. So it's in a really good sweet spot. And the business is in a very healthy place at this point because of the hard work and dedication and focus that we put on the user, like
Yeah.
really put the user first here. And you open up the app, it localizes you. I'm in Atlanta, so I get my local now channel, I get WSB and the other locals that are available to me. And we have our pipeline where we're going to have every fast channel that's available. So every local TV station in this country that has a fast channel, we have our sights set on getting live on the platform. We have most of them live already. We're
It's
the ones
amazing.
that
Sorry to interrupt, but like local affords you certain luxuries you don't have with more generic content, right? Because it gives you literally location in the universe, right? In terms of the relevancy of the content, in terms of narrowing down this cornucopia of content and search to what's relevant to you in Atlanta, for instance, right? So talk about that a little bit and how that shapes your strategy and maybe where the future of local is going aligned with the direction of streaming.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, look, I think, we talk about fast and we talk about platforms, and yes, has it's the awareness has scaled. More people know what it is than they did 3 years ago.
Yeah.
But if I knock on my neighbor's door and say, "Hey, what's your favorite fast channel?" That they're going to be like, "What are you talking about?" Right? They have no idea.
Inside
If
baseball,
I
like
say,
we keep inventing new terms before
right,
consumers even
right.
figure out the old ones, right?
Right. What the right question is, hey, do you still have cable or how do you watch TV? Do you have a smart TV?
Yeah.
What streaming stick? This is usually how it goes for me. What streaming stick do you have? Right. And that leads to what I typically see is that leads to a conversation about, yeah, but I signed up for this, but I don't get my local station. So I cut the cord. It, it gets to the biggest problem, right? Which is, it's not a frictionless environment and it's not simple. It's still complicated. We definitely saw that coming very early, and that's where the pioneering technology came in. And, we already obviously had the pedigree of local and we had the pedigree of localization capabilities. So what we saw on the market was like, okay, so really what we can do to super serve and be most useful to a consumer, which is really anyone who wants to be successful, right? Am I being useful to a consumer? It's really just that simple. That's what we focused our UI on and said, okay, let's go get every local fast channel available. Let's get PBS. We have all 330 plus markets that PBS serves live on the platform. By
Yeah.
the way, we are the only free ad supported streaming service that offers every PBS station in the United States. And it's a great honor. We love our partners at PBS. We have all the major Big Four network affiliates. Some of the bigger O&O groups we're in the final stages of, but we're working diligently to get those live. And what that does is it delivers on the promise. Users open it, they find it, and they see the brands that they know and love. And increasingly, as Local Now's become a household name, they see Local Now, and then if they don't know it, they come to know and love it. That's what we're seeing in our metrics. Our users are using our Local Now channel every day. And the reason for that, and just kind of gets to your question a little bit more granularly, like why local? Well, here's what's happening. More of our users are using us as a daily habit than ever before. There was a period in time where maybe say 15% of our audience, this is maybe a year ago, was about our most passionate users. That number has just absolutely skyrocketed,
Mhm.
probably approaching 70% at this point. And the
So,
reason
so
for
high
that is
engagement.
high engagement
Yeah.
and repeat usage,
Yeah.
and which is super important, right? It's a crowded space, so you've got to have something for people to get every day. And that's where having our local news weather, right? And we're doing about 500,000 localized clips per day scattered across every market in the US. So the promise is they turn on local now almost like they would turn on the Today Show
Right.
a
It's the
decade ago.
background. It's always there. Yeah.
Right. But we're providing weather updates, right? We're curating news. We have a newsroom that curates the content. So, we focus more on, what's going on in the economy, in your local economy, right?
Mhm.
What are the socioeconomic issues? What are what legislation's going on that might be relevant with the schools, right? Taxes, et cetera. These are stories that are important to people, right? Our
Right.
our audience, right, is working, right? They're high income, right? They're, late stage millennials. They were looking for a solution, right? Which is what's a modern day version of something that I can have on in my house that's both informative, brand safe, right? And I can count on every day to be there. And
Yeah.
that's what we is driving that 70%. So we've been very pleased with that progress. In addition to that, right? So having the most local available, having over 1,000 channels, we also have a tremendous amount of high quality brand recognized IP on the platform. So major studio titles, major studio channels, the biggest names in Hollywood, and it's all free.
Yeah.
So, we're not playing in the direct to consumer space of trying to win a subscription. We fit very nicely with your subscription to Netflix and your subscription to Max.
Right.
It's a complement, and it serves a very specific purpose. What
Yeah.
we have seen, which is interesting, it just all goes back. It really is
It's
so
part of the whole
simple.
portfolio, right? You're playing in
Yeah.
your lane and it's very familiar to the consumer. A lot of
Yeah.
that other stuff isn't. It's confusing and they're trying to figure out where to get their content different places. But all the local stuff that you put together, it's seamless to the world they came from, right?
Yeah. And the good news for us is it's, because we've built this reputation in the market and, we've become a major service. It helped us now with all of the high quality the studios that have the IP, which there's lots of announcements
Yeah.
coming. We launched all of our channels on LG in a major distribution deal.
Yeah.
We'll be announcing pretty much we have an assembly line of announcements coming across content partnerships. We
Yeah.
just launched the BBC, and some big
You said
names
you
that
have
I can't.
PBS. I mean, once you get that scale too, good things happen, right? You get sort of this virtuous cycle where now you've got greater distribution. It gets easier to, get those content deals, correct?
Absolutely right. I mean, it's just confidence, and trust me, I was on the front lines in the early days, trying to get cheddar on local now, and that was before we even launched, and
Mhm.
it was a different time and place. People back then, I think, I mean, I say back then in 2021, people were willing to roll the dice a little more. Now you've got to have a clear strategy. What
Yeah.
is your kind of spot in the market? And then also, there's safety and scale, right? There's safety and brand recognition for others, and we're seeing that it's helping us tremendously. But the other part of it that's really been useful for us is because we have this high quality audience. It's really it's a national platform, right? That's the most important thing to take away. It's a national platform, national scale, leads with local for that daily habit. But what we're seeing is that our this loyal audience loves, right, coming every day.
Hmm.
And now, as we've added this high quality content adjacent to their local content, so we have the local now channel and their local affiliate, they're watching a national news feed, right? They're watching NBC
Right.
News
So
Now
it's
or
a
the Today
gateway or
Show.
portal. The local aspect is gets
Yes,
them in the
correct.
door. It's familiar,
Yep.
but then you can expand upon that and it becomes more of like a starting point for them.
Correct. And then it leads to sort of, if you think of like just the user journey, it
Yeah.
started off with just local now, then we added the local affiliates and then multiple local affiliates. And now they consume those. And then you add in these national channels like CBS News and Bloomberg, and they're consuming those. And then they're going to entertainment. And then we get them, if we can get you to do all of that and watch a couple of movies a week, you
You're
are.
doing better than 90% of the other sort of tiles that are out there. I want to switch gears a little bit, Michael. Thank you for that career background, very interesting, and sort of what you're doing at Allen Media Group. I want to talk about some of the interesting trends. My next question has to do with really kind of that device ecosystem, because you
Mhm.
talked about it this little bit. The CTV, you've got the mobile, you've got dongles and everything. For me, one of the big improvements in the industry, back in the day, you always had to go to the input button on your remote. A very simple thing. Most people didn't know how to do that. It was like, okay, why am I doing that? It's like a different operating system. It's just like a different parallel universe type of thing. Where, how, where are we right now as an industry in terms of managing the user experience and making it seamless and overcoming a lot of the complexities in your mind? And what more needs to be done to make that full digital experience really lean back and comfortable?
Yeah, I mean, I think this gets to AI, right?
Okay.
We have relationships at Allen Media Group at the highest level from an enterprise standpoint, with Vizio and Google TV and Amazon Fire and Roku and Samsung and LG, right? So we're talking to their product teams, and what I hear a lot of these days is AI. Like, we're shifting to use AI, and I'm actually, sort of fascinated. It's one of my hobbies is AI, which I can talk about later. But what I'm learning is that, AI ultimately is going to transform streaming television. Uh, it's not if, it's just when it'll happen.
Okay.
But in the meantime, what I am seeing is a much stronger emphasis, right, on the companies and the brands that are doing exactly what I said earlier, which is, are you serving the user's need, right? A good example, I'll give you an example. So under our group, we also have the Weather Channel television streaming app. So we have a dedicated direct to consumer service just for streaming the Weather Channel.
Hmm.
And we have that distributed on the CTVs. Where we see success, right? And this kind of gets to your question is, so like, a couple of those platforms have seen exponential growth, right, during severe weather or a period of time in which users are seeking this life-saving information.
Hmm.
So to me, it's a combination of technology, human curation, right,
Hmm.
and overall just product strategy for the CTV to go, okay, like, people are turning us on. This is the gateway. It's almost the way Google was the gateway, right, to the internet. Google was the gateway to the world at some point, and then it evolved, and you've got all these entry points now from social to TV, right, to AI. To me, that's what the OEMs are. It's a piece of glass hanging in your living room, and I mean, it is the most powerful position in the world to have. You turn a TV on, and I can show
Yeah.
you, whatever you want to see. I happen to have a big Vizio hanging right in front of me, and they're constantly evolving their platform, right?
Right.
So I think they're doing a good job. It's the combination of design, UX, product strategy. I think it's slower than I thought it would have been. I thought it would have all moved a lot faster.
Yeah.
But you've got a lot of real estate on that screen, and you've got a lot of people fighting for that real estate. It's critical.
Yeah,
So I
and the
think
weird thing
that.
about the connected TV is it's a high-tech electronic platform that's somewhat software upgradable, right? Given the constraints of the processor and storage and stuff like that. But it's also an appliance, right? Like it has been
Mhm,
forever, where it just hangs on a wall, it sits on a table, and you turn it on, and it might have a life cycle. I mean, I still have my original HD video Vizio. It's got to be 10 plus 12 years old, I think. And it
mhm.
works fine. My kids have, hooked the Xbox up to it. Um, so interesting. I think, there's a level of sophistication that's also happened in the industry with consumers, better navigating the different device choices they have to make. Not perfect, but
Mhm.
if you were to give it a rating of like one terrible 10, where this is as good as it's going to get right now, where would you put that in terms of the user experience?
Yeah, I'd say we're probably on some platforms, I would say probably the highest score I would give is maybe a 7.
Okay.
There's a couple that are sub 5, and there's several that are in the mid fives. I say that because I just think that the same way that, it's like, just I'm trying to think of a good example. Like, you throw your Beats on, right?
Mhm.
Your Beats headphones, right? Your iPhone recognizes it and says, "Hey, do you want to connect?" It's one click, you're done. right? Like that to me is like that's frictionless,
Yep.
right? Frictionless is your Amazon Fire saying setting your alarm to wake up before you even ask it to, because it knows it's a weekday
Hmm.
and it knows your schedule, right? Like that is just
So that's
seamless
where
and
the intelligence, I mean, AI,
yeah.
that umbrella term can help us, right, as human beings.
Or right, or Waze, the traffic
Yeah.
navigating app saying, "Hey, are you headed? It's suggesting your directions to go home because it knows what you're doing."
But that's
That's
interesting.
kind of
It's interesting you mention ways because that's a combination of, intelligence, right? The Borg and the
Mhm.
cloud, AI, whatever, and sort of crowdsourcing. And I think there's some parallels there to the media entertainment industry in that, yeah, AI might play a role for curation, maybe even content creation, right? We're going to save a ton of money supposedly with, you know, uh, you know, uh, background scenes and whatever, but also looking at our patterns of behavior. But we also have the social aspect where consumers, we can mine that data, see what they're doing, right? And they can suggest to us their patterns of behavior of content they want to watch, right? And that can maybe suggest new titles or whatever. So, I mean, do you think it's going to be a handshake there, or is AI eventually going to get so smart that the humans will be less than 10% of the equation?
it's so funny you asked the question. I wasn't going to bring it up, but so I'm actually writing a LinkedIn post that just for writing is a hobby of mine, and I believe that AI will eventually build the ultimate streaming service. There's only really a couple things blocking it from doing it. Um, and most of it is, obviously, just sort of the business's kind of concern. But if we were to pull out,
But get out of
sort
its
of,
way, right?
if you pulled egos out of the way
Yep.
and you pulled P&Ls out of the way just for a moment and said, what will be the best experience for a user? Like just how can a streaming service best serve Brian?
Hmm.
Like it's not that complicated, right? There's probably a list of 100 things that you do or watch throughout the year
Hmm.
that could formulate very clear and very specific recommendations to you
Yeah.
across all things. These are the NFL games you watch. These are the MLB games you watch. This is
Yeah.
the news type of movies, right? Down to it. And then really just as your behavior is all synced up, to me, AI is going to eventually do that. So
But
AI will be.
here's the challenge with AI. We're getting really philosophical here. Is it too derivative based on my past experience? Like, I discovered some years ago I like Chinese war films that are, titled. They're massive scale and all the characters and everything else. I don't know. I like that. And in some other titles like that. Would AI ever be able to recommend that to me? Would I be in this kind of artificial dome, of my past viewing habits?
Well, I mean, if you're not, I mean, I think that like the YouTube algorithm's already doing this, right? It's like it'll suggest something to me that I was like, went down a rabbit hole on at one
Mhm.
point, but then I don't really interact with it again. And for nearly as much as I'm interacting with other content, and it doesn't take very long for it to just like dismiss it.
Okay.
So it's not gonna be
Yeah.
perfect, right? But it will, to me, the road will narrow, right? The more and more and more AI learns, the road will narrow.
And maybe you
And
always
it
do
will,
have a rabbit hole button. Like, you know what? I want something totally off the wall new. Hit the button, boom, show me something cool. Maybe
yeah,
maybe that is kind of push driven,
yeah.
pull driven.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I think the point I'm making is that even if that doesn't ever happen, so you have these walled gardens of sports rights still as consolidation happens, right? You're going to continue to see, the Hulu's plus Disney Plus, right? Bundled in together
Yeah.
and right and Max and so forth and so on. So they'll all be, you'll have these sort of separate worlds, but within those worlds, you're
Hmm.
going to see AI take over. So I think there's two things happening. You have the apps, right? So you have the owned and operated streaming services that are
Yes.
just apps like Local Now and the Weather Channel app, who are using AI, right? So we're not publicly talking about sort of what we're doing, but we have a variety of incubation going on with AI. And then you've got the glass maker, right? Who is, whether it's Vizio or whoever, that's doing their own Amazon Fire TV,
Hmm.
that's doing their own AI. So eventually AI will talk to AI,
Okay.
right? it's able to, extract and pull things to the forefront. I mean, it's already doing it to some extent, but I just like it's look, AI, the hot AI topic in the last year or two, right, is just in its infancy. Just think about a couple of years from now,
I mean, it's
right?
crazy. I mean, there's the big
Yeah.
talk of NAB. A lot of it was kind of vaporware, but I saw some really interesting demos about ad insertion and local ad insertion, for instance, using AI.
Mhm.
So yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot there, and we could talk for hours about AI. It's such a fascinating topic. But I do want to get to sort of one of the things we like to do in these podcasts, Michael, is to personalize some of the luminaries in the industry and get to know you a little bit better. Is there a hobby or an interest or something you can share with our audience?
Sure. Actually, I do like goofing around with AI in all seriousness, but having fun with it. Whenever there's news of a merger of a company, I usually ask AI to come up with a new logo. I did this recently when Warner Brothers mentioned buying Paramount. I asked for the top 10 logo ideas.
No
I actually
way. That's
I
awesome.
wrote, yeah. What would the new logo look like just for fun? To me, it's creativity. I think creativity is so
Yeah.
important. For me, not taking myself too seriously in this dynamic world is really important and humbling. And I think it just helps see clearly, what we can do to be better leaders, right? And to help evolve our organizations to be competitive in this dynamic market. And, I do that through a variety of means. I love running. I love biking.
Mhm.
I'm doing a lot of that these days, and it's a good opportunity to think outside the office and really come up with the strategy to do the next right thing, number one, and number two, to really um, do the best job I can as a leader, right, to inspire innovation across the organization. We're a very entrepreneurial company at Allen Media Group. We have one, our chairman, CEO, and founder, Byron Allen, started the company, from his dining room table. And,
Mhm.
a lot of that energy still persists throughout the company. So learning ways and to execute that here at the company and inspiring next generations of our leaders and innovators is something that I like to think about a lot about. So
So that would be a great way to end this, Michael. What would be your advice? I mean, go back to your, earlier self at late night with David Letterman, and for folks at that point in their career right now that want to really, ride the wave and take this industry for what it is. And we've had a tough couple of years with cutbacks and so on. What advice would you give to them?
I think if you find someone that has something that you want, right, or they're doing something that you want to do, um, just start by asking simple questions like, "Hey, I'll work for free for a weekend, or I'll come in and shadow you, or would you be willing to let me shadow you?
Mhm.
And how can I be helpful?" Right? What can I do to help you? And you'd be surprised. There's a lot of people out there that know that they owe it back to people to give them opportunities. And when you take that approach and keep it simple, you'd be surprised what lies ahead. So, but if you don't ask, right, then you'll never get. So you do have to take the action.
Right.
It's all about action. Take the action. I'd say there's times where I'll send notes to people that I want to reach out to personally, and I don't get a response. And maybe it's not for a while, but then eventually I do get a response,
Hmm.
right? And if I did ask if I was offering to be useful and they take me up on it, then I may have an opportunity awaiting me. So
Yeah.
take action, and try to be useful. And I think doors will open.
I love it. Take action, be useful, humbly ask for how you can help, and
Yeah.
doors will open for you. I think that's fantastic advice, really, in any industry.
Yeah, absolutely. It pertains to daily life too. If you're in a family or a relationship as well, right? So you can use it everywhere.
I'll pass this advice on to my kids. Maybe they'll offer to mow the lawn. Well, listen,
Yeah, I try that all the time. It doesn't really go as well as planned.
I'll
So
have to ask AI, the best advice for how to get my kids to mow the lawn and other tasks around. Well, listen, Mike, I really enjoyed this conversation. Great getting to know you a little bit better, understanding your background and what you're doing at Allen Media Group. I think it's fantastic, and yeah, really appreciate the time today.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. I appreciate it. Honored to be here with you. I really appreciate the work you're doing, and thank you for taking the time to have me on.
Sounds great. Once again, this is Brian Mahoney, the CEO of Trend Research and president of OTT Executive Community, joined by Michael Senzon from Allen Media Group. Thanks again, Michael.
Thanks, guys.
Signing off, everybody. Take care. Thank you.